Welcome to part 2 of the Reading FC Iconic 11. We've heard from Ross from his Iconic 11. What an Iconic 11 it was as well.
Yep.
And we're going to hear from a very special guest today, actually, to discuss his Iconic 11.
Definitely has a presence in this studio. A guest that really knows this place like the back of his own hand.
Around about 30 years of Reading FC watchingness. A lot of players to pick. Who is our guest today, Ross? Who is going to be talking about their Iconic 11?
Well, that would be Mr. Ben Thomas, Mr. BL Thomas, of course, our own host here for the show. So, listeners, in a minute, you'll hear a shuffling of sides, as you will, on the couch, or we record remotely, so there's no couch, but or table or whatever. But I will go and sit in Ben's chair. It's very Welsh over here. It's odd things across the Atlantic. Yeah.
Do you know what? Before we get started, and obviously we said last time out that Ryan had come up with this idea. Honestly, when you said, because I was going to take myself out of it, wasn't I? And
right.
You were like, no, you need to do it. And I was absolutely petrified. I was like, how do I select an 11? Like, what do I do? Do I pick players that I think other people want to hear about? Do I pick players that I genuinely love? Do I pick players that I was like, when they were playing, spoiler alert, none of them are from the current squad in my team, who I genuinely loved watching play in their respective teams. And that's kind of what I've gone for.
Yeah. No, I think that's what this series is about. So I think that's great.
I'm pretty happy with this. It's been difficult. It's been really, really difficult in a really good way. I had to kind of look through all the programs and all the other stuff that I've got in terms of all the players I have actually physically seen with my own eyes. But I'm pretty happy with this. And what I'm not going to do is like defend them. I'm going to just say, look, I'm picking these players because of X, Y, Z.
Right,
and
yeah.
If people want to disagree with me, I'm fine with that.
The whole point of this show is that it's personal choice. This series, it's personal choice. It was difficult for me as well to put the team together. But when I came up with it, they're like lovely. It was a lovely time just going down memory lane and picking people. Tomas Estevez came out of the very back corners of my brain. I don't think I've thought about him for 3 years, but then suddenly he came racing out, and it was just nice to spend a little bit of time with those memories. So that's what we're doing here, and I think actually that's a good point, listeners. If you're seeing the posts on Twitter or whatever when the podcasts go up, share your teams as well. Obviously, tell us who you would have, and who knows, maybe they'll get spoken about today or in future episodes.
Maybe. Before we get started on my team, this is so weird.
This is weird. Anyway,
yeah. Before we get started, massive thanks as always to ZCZ Films. Thank you very much as well for them just being great guys and girls and sponsors. But also thanks to you guys for listening, because we've knocked out quite a few pods this season, obviously, and they've done very well numbers wise. I have to say, very, very well. Probably more than they should have done given the season that we've had on and off the pitch. But also, in this kind of off season that we're, I was going to say experiencing, we have it every single year, but it's a really long off season this season, if that makes sense. We dropped Ross's Iconic 11 a couple of days ago, a day ago.
Tuesday morning. I don't know. It kept sitting in my queue, so it's out there now.
It was there.
Yeah.
But, again, a lot of people listen to that already, and I really, really hope that you enjoy this series. We've got about 5 or 6 of these lined up over the course of the next few weeks. So I really, really hope you enjoy them, and it just gives you some sort of happy memories when we probably need them. And just good to kind of engage in discussion and conversation. So without further ado, we're going to have a short break, and then Russ will be back to literally flip the script, sit in my chair and ask me all the questions. So we will see you in a bit.
Keep up to date with all things Reading FC. Follow the Tilehurst End on Facebook and Twitter.
This podcast is proudly sponsored by ZCZ Films. Remember, if you want to get involved in sponsoring the show, drop us an email to thetilehurstend@gmail.com.
All right, here we are then. I've slid over into the you've kept the seat warm for me all season, apart from when I've been over here for the occasional interview. But I'm in the rare bit throne, and I'm ready to talk to you about your team. So if you heard the first one, listeners, you might know that what we kind of did was we ran through what the formation would be, and then we ran through position group, by position group, and then we did a manager at the end. So we'll go with that again today, obviously starting with the goalkeeper, going up through the forwards. But Ben, obviously my brain can't get away from the tactics, but I don't think that's necessarily what other people have done with this. So what have you got for us in terms of a formation today?
So I have gone I've gone 4-4-1-1.
Oh, nice. Okay. Classic.
And it kind of all fits in reasonably well until we get to midfield, which we'll or the wingers rather, which we'll talk about in due course. But honestly, like, I'm absolutely buzzed. I'm being so excited to talk about this team, like really, really excited.
All right.
As I said in
Nice.
the intro, 93 I started watching Reading Football Club. August 93 I went to my first game, so I've got a fair few players to kind of look at. And yeah, it was just great, like sitting down and looking for all these players again. Who can I put here? Who can I put there? And trying to make it work as sensibly as I can, really. But the kind of the formation I've settled on is 4-4-1-1. So
Nice.
yeah,
Nice.
I
Okay.
think it'll work. I think it'll work.
The collection, you're making me realize now I should have gone through a collection of programs and, looked at the lineups on the back on this just to see if any names poke out that might not be coming up immediately. But all right, well, let's start with your goalkeeper then. And Ben's wearing a goalkeeper shirt today for any audio listeners. So clearly it's a position of import. Who have you gone for in net?
I'm wearing the Raphael special. Absolutely adore this kit. Love this kit
Yeah.
so much. Okay, so this was kind of fairly easy for me because this guy was he was one of my very first footballing heroes, and I distinctly remember standing in the Tilehurst end at Elm Park, and watching just the stature of a man, command his penalty area, and that's Shaka Hislop.
Brilliant.
To boot, he's a fantastic guy. He's doing a lot of work over in the States, I believe, Ross. Which
Yep, yeah, he's all over TV over here on the ESPN coverage. Yeah, he does really good.
But he was one of my very first heroes, and he had at the time a big money move to Newcastle in around '95. I think he left, to join up with Kevin Keegan, and that was a big deal. Seeing him in the sticker packets, the kind of the Merlin sticker albums was massive, even though he was wearing a Newcastle shirt. But Shaka was absolutely superb. I think he made over 104 appearances maybe for us. He was just great, and granted he didn't have a huge amount of competition at the time. There was a lot of backup keepers that just weren't great. Simon Shepherd, bless him, rings a bell. Steve Montaigne, I think, was around in those days, but Shaka was just a phenomenal goalkeeper. Very, very understated when he spoke, but just had all the attributes of a great player. So he was a very, very easy pick for me in net, shall we say?
And I think when you say, that's true. I said in net, sorry, in goal. But I think when you say, he was a great guy. He's a club legend at a few clubs, right? At Reading, at Newcastle, arguably at West Ham as well. So I think that kind of speaks to him as well. You're already poking at something that I think might be kind of interesting for me as I go through this. My first Reading game was in 2004, I think. So I'm a little behind you, and I never got to see Shaka play. So I'm wondering if there are going to be a few others in here that I didn't have the good fortune to watch. Unfortunately, the other thing I don't have the good fortune to remember, Merlin stickers. We've talked about Panini and Topps recently. What are Merlin stickers?
So Merlin had the rights to the Premier League album, or the Premier League album from, I think the first one they knocked out was '94, when when the Premier League was really sort of kicking in.
Yeah,
it was for the '93-'94 season, and then they just carried on, and it always came out at around the January time. And I remember I certainly remember Premier League album '95 being massive, like it was huge, and being on the playground of
Yep.
my primary school, and people just swapping all the time, and people coming in with like massive stacks of them, and it was insane, and that carried on for sort of a good 3 or 4 years. I don't know
Yeah.
if Merlin got brought out by Tops, maybe I'm not sure, but they don't exist to my knowledge anymore. But they were really really good, and it
Yeah.
was it was it was a highly addictive thing, collecting stickers. And as a Reading fan, seeing seeing an ex-player in the packets and the album was something else. So yeah,
Yeah.
Shaka for me is a very very important part of my childhood, shall we say?
Nice, nice. A cursory Google does show that the Premier League sticker album from Merlin's in '95 is pretty spectacular. So I
Yeah,
think we'll have to dig that out, see if we can find the Shaka sticker,
yeah.
as it were. All right, so that's your goalkeeper. So you've got a back four. Why don't you, same as we did last time? Why don't you take us across the back four, and
Okay.
then I'll tell you who I want to hear about a little bit more. Does that sound good?
Yeah, fine. So I'll start on the left. Um, Jordan Abita for me on the left.
Right. Yeah, both of
Um,
us. Yeah.
I'm then going for, and for me it doesn't really matter whether they play right or left in the central defence, but I've got Nelson Abbey as the most recent player. Um,
Okay.
I've also, I don't know if you'll know this guy. I don't know if you started watching 2004. He might have still been around in the squad, but there was a guy who joined in December 2002 called Steve Brown,
Okay.
who good player. Anyway, we'll
All
discuss
right.
him if you want. And then
Steve Brown. Yeah, let's discuss him in a minute because that's the
okay,
most standard name ever. But all
yeah,
right, tell me the right back as well.
and then right back. I mean, anyone who's listened to the pod, anyone who's read my articles, anyone who knows me, there's no question it's going to be Chris Gunter. I mean,
Yeah.
it has to be in at right back. So yeah, Jordan Abita, Nelson Abbey, Steve Brown, Chris Gunter. That's my back four.
All right. All right. Okay. I want to hear about Mr. Brown because I just don't know anything about him. But I do, listeners, I understand what you're crying out for right now, obviously. And I will let Ben dig himself a hole with an impassioned defense of Chris Gunter in a minute. But do you want to tell us about what's his name? Steve Brown?
Yeah, Steve Brown. So Steve Brown was, I nearly called him Sir Steve, but that was a bit weird.
Yeah.
He was signed December 2002 by Alan Pardew, who will have been around. They kind of knew each other from their Charlton days, right? And you ask any Charlton fan, I know we're not talking about them, but you ask any Charlton fan about Steve Brown, and he will be maybe a cult legend, but he's definitely really well known. He did really really well for them. Played in the Premier League, I think, for them as well. Kept them up, or was part of the team that helped them stay up. Under Alan Kirbishley, and was kind of coming to the end of his career really. And he
Mm.
came in, as I said, sort of late 2002. Came straight into the team. I think he played in total over the 2 years he was with us. He played 45, 46 games, something like that. But he was, as the name suggests, very, very unassuming, very, very, um, being respectful here, run of the mill looking. But what he did have was huge shorts. Like I'm talking massive shorts, like comically big shorts. Like you say, those
Excellent.
baseball players in like the 1920s where they were wearing those really baggy
Yeah. I was
trousers.
going to say
He
some of
was
the
almost like
MJ
that.
era,
Right.
basketball shorts.
Yeah. But he, as a player, he was just no nonsense. Like he was very, very. You'd watch a game and you wouldn't notice him, and you wouldn't notice a lot of the things that he did. But actually, for me, that's always a really good sign of a quality defender, right? Someone who knows the game really well, a lot of experience. And at that time, there was a few youngsters in the team that probably needed calming down and a little bit of leveling. And Pardew would come in, and it'd all been a bit weird previously, and all this sort of stuff. And he was just a very calming influence on the team. And he was kind of around the era of the second spell of AD Williams. I think AD Vivash was around at the time as well. And it was kind of like we were settling in to be in this club, playing at Medeski, we were appealing to kind of a new generation coming through, and he was really the last throwback of those sort of players that we kind of really needed at that time, just to kind of level things out and just to kind of just calm things down when it needed to be calm. And yeah, he was just a really, really good player, you know. And as I said, he wasn't there for very long, but he was trusted by Alan Pardew, and kind of he really set the, you know, the foundation for us moving forward, and obviously then getting promoted back into Division One, the Championship, you know, as it was in those days. So yeah, really, really good guy. Happy to have him in my team, and I think he'd be, you know, very, very good alongside Nelson Abbey personally.
So I did some cursory research while you were giving us the intro there. And if you remember Benji from the Chronicle a few years back, he did an interview with Steve Brown for the 150th anniversary. So if you're looking for more from the man himself, you can find it there. But why would we need more? Ben's already giving us a good rundown. So all right. Get on your soapbox. Give me the Chris Gunter apologia celebration, whatever you want to call it. And listeners, I'm just going to remind you, we've all known for a long time that Ben loves Chris Gunter, to the point where he made me ask Nick Blackman who was the best at training and why was it Chris Gunter. Which did get a good laugh from Nick, to be fair. He was a good sport about it. He asked if Chris had sent in that question. So as if from the mouth of Chris himself, why don't you tell us about Chrissy Gunter?
Okay, so I'm definitely going to apologise for him. I know that a lot of Reading fans don't like Chris Gunter, and I've never really understood that.
I don't understand that either, by the way. I just want to say, sorry, I cut you off again. Before you get started, I don't understand that either. I didn't love Chris Gunter, but I don't have any big issue with him. Please continue, Ben. I'm going to shut up now.
Well, look, he stats wise, he was with us for just over 8 years. He made 314 appearances, I believe, across all competitions, and was regularly picked by a succession of managers in that right back slot. Now, we know when Gomez came in, him and McCleary were sidelined, and I don't want to go into all the negative stuff because there's a lot of potential reasons as to why that was. But the minute Gomez was removed, Chris Gunter comes straight back into the team. And for me, you know, I always played fullback, mainly on the right, sometimes on the left. But Chris Gunter had all the tools. He was regular, he was consistent, he was always around a 6 or 7 in terms of the ratings, very rarely injured, didn't get suspended, didn't get booked very regularly, was just an out-and-out athlete. And I think whether you're talking about Wales as a nation, whether you're talking about Brazil as a nation, whether you're talking about, I don't know, South Africa, whether you're talking about Mauritius, it doesn't matter where you play football. If you've played over 100 times for your country, there has to be something about you as a player. And, you know, obviously we're talking about his contribution to our football club, but you can't ignore the fact that he played so many times for Wales, you know, on a varied selection of quality in terms of those teams, and still got picked regularly in front of other players. Even when he wasn't, you know, playing regularly for his clubs, he was still getting picked at right back for Wales. Now, people might argue, well, that's Wales, it's the depth, all the rest of it. But, you know, for me, certainly at our football club, he set the tone and the expectation for what every other player should do in terms of that consistency. And, you know, we've had year Dom in recent years and he's been okay. You know, he's had spells where he's been very good, spells where he's not been good. But actually, you know, the whole point with that is that we've struggled to find consistency on that right side since Chris Gunter has left. And that for me is really quite telling. You know, he was picked by so many managers and trusted by so many managers. He could get up and down the pitch, he could tackle, organisation wise, he knew what to do. You know, he was captain on a couple of occasions as well. And he was just that kind of calming influence, I think, that we needed within those teams at various points, especially when the manager changed regularly, which it did in that period of time that he was at the club. So, yeah, Chris Gunter for me is an absolute shoe. I mean, you know, you could look at right backs, you go, well, Graham Murty and other players. You know, I looked at, there was a guy, you know, for fullback position, there was a guy who used to play for us who we got from Celtic in, I think it was 94 or 95, a guy called Dariusz Wadowczyk, who was a Polish international. But Chris Gunter was, the absolute model of consistency. And
Mhm.
as you said with Nick Blackman early in the season, he was very highly thought of by his fellow professionals. And yeah, I think long term he's got a good future in the game in terms of coaching and what he can and can't do with those younger players. So yeah, Chris
Definitely,
Gunter,
yeah.
100% is in for me.
Nice. You're not wrong that we're kind of spoiled at that right back spot, right? Like Graham Murty, obviously being there, and I think Yidom, was somebody that I very much considered for my team as well. So yeah, we have certainly had some good players there, and yeah, no, Chris Gunter, like I say, I mean, decent player, and what you say about Wales is very true. We yes gave him a platform for him to do, to engage in some pretty impressive exploits with Wales while he was with us. But at the same time, those performances helped his performances with Reading and vice versa, back and forth. I just think that he was consistent and solid for a long period of time. And that is something that is difficult to celebrate contemporarily while you're there and then, but
Yeah.
once it's gone, as you kind of say, you really notice it, and replacing it is difficult.
I think as well, final point is that, with the amount of managers that we had in that time period, they all wanted to play in a different style, right? They all wanted to do
Yeah.
different things. But actually, one of the first names on the team sheet was Chris Gunter. Whether you wanted to be, flat back four, whether you wanted to try 3 or 5, whatever it was, in and out of possession, inverted, non-inverted, whatever you want to do, Chris Gunter was always there in some capacity. And I think that's really telling of his kind of flexibility and the way that he understood the game. He didn't have a great time at Spurs, particularly. It was okay at Forest, but for us, he was really good over that. Well, I say really good. I know people go, he didn't do this, didn't this, but he was just very, very consistent and very solid. And we miss players like that, I think, at our football club currently. So,
Yeah.
Go Chris.
All right. I'm going to. I know that Abby and Abita deserve their flowers, but I think we've given Abby his flowers this season. And I know that Abita, we will get to him in this series. So let's hear your midfield. Maybe we'll dive back, but let me hear your midfield, and then let's see if there's anyone else there that we want to investigate first.
Okay, so I'll start on the left again. So Bobby Convey goes on the left for me.
Fantastic.
And then I've got Phil Parkinson. This one is coming up. This is the one I'm sure you're going to want to talk about.
All right.
Saeed Zatalai in the middle with Parky.
Okay, nice.
And then
Perfect.
on the right-hand side, have a think who I might have had to crowbar in at the right wing position.
You're crowbarring.
Who wouldn't normally play on the right.
Wouldn't normally play on the right. Okay. Oh my, I can't think of. Have you got James Harper in out there or something? Is this a Paul Scholes thing?
He is a winger. Well, sort of.
Okay. But you've got him on the wrong side, do you?
Yeah.
Okay. Have you got Oster?
No.
No. Okay. I'm just checking. Jimmy Kebe?
No.
No. All right. Tell me who it is.
Junior Hoylett.
Oh, of course. Right. Yes. Okay. But you could crowbar him into your team wherever you like. Yeah. That's the thing with Hoylett. He was remarkably.
Well, in one version, they side him up front.
Yeah. That's fair. He can play any. He's a Swiss Army knife of a player, isn't he? Really, Hoylett? Because I remember him starting as a left back.
But he's on. Yeah, exactly. He's on my right hand side because I had to get Bobby in there on the left.
Okay. All right. I like this. I like all of this. I kind of want to talk about all of them. I actually, though, as somebody who's a little bit younger and became aware of him more through the Bradford City League Cup and FA Cup runs rather than through Welcome to Wrexham, which now has him kind of as a big part of it. But tell me about Phil Parkinson, because he has his own corner in the Medeski. And I think that, I haven't heard, there's apparently a song, We All Dream of a Team of Phil Parkinson's, but I've never heard that. So tell us about Phil Parkinson.
Well, have you never heard the one at Christmas as well? You not heard the one at Christmas?
No,
5 Parkinsons, 4 Parkinsons. It's brilliant, that.
Okay. All right. Tell us about him then.
Okay, I've not picked him as a kind of cliche box ticking exercise. He was generally one of the best midfielders I've ever seen play.
Hmm.
And there's loads of facts I could roll off, but when you have a player that has a testimonial and you have it at the Madstad as it was known at that time, and
Yep.
20,000 people turn up for it, you understand the measure of the man in terms of what he was able to do for the club and also the community as well. That is, that's kind of almost elite level player in terms of the percentage of the fan base that turn up and do stuff really. So I think for me, he is undoubtedly one of the best midfielders we've ever had.
Mm.
He tackled, he put effort in, he was the captain, he marshalled people. He did not care what people thought of him at all in terms of the opposing players, but he always did it with the best interest of the football club at heart and the team at heart. And I never ever saw him give less than 100% in any game ever that I saw him play.
Nice.
He was player of the season 2 seasons in a row, 97, 98, and then 98, 99. 361 appearances over 11 years. Phenomenal player. And obviously everyone will know him through Welcome to Wrexham because he's their manager now. But he was a stunning player, absolutely stunning player.
Nice. All right. I know that some of the older hands will be like, yeah, we've heard about Parky before, but I wanted to get that context out there. Let's flip it in the completely opposite direction. This player, I would call him a Reading FIFA wonder kid. When we in a period where Reading bought a lot of players that really didn't work out on the pitch, but really worked out in terms of FIFA overall ratings, which is probably why it didn't really work out on the pitch. Saeed Etsa Talahi, one of the top for that. I think he hardly played at all for Reading because of an injury, but great player on FIFA. So definitely got picked a lot in those teams for me. But Ben, tell me about the man himself, not the pixels.
So people will be sat there going, right, listen, you've had 30 plus years of watching the team. You could have had your Steve Sidwells, you could have had your James Harpers, you could have had your John Osters, as you said, crowbarred in there. You could have had anybody in there, anybody at all, right? So why have you picked a player that made 4 appearances on loan for us? And the reason for that is that he made his debut against Hull at home, and we won. I think we won 3-0. He played 70 minutes, and he was replaced by, I think, and you're the stats man, Ross, but I think he was replaced by John Swift on 70 minutes.
Oh wow! Okay.
And I distinctly remember almost having a situation where he's signing on loan. I think he might have come from Rostov, maybe somewhere along those lines.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yep.
He came in with a glut of players, and I didn't really think anything of it. And he played in this game against Hull. And at half time, I went down just before half time. Actually, I went down to, I don't know, get something. It wasn't liquid. It was solids that I was buying. And I
Right.
remember looking up at where I sit in the Dale, and you kind of queue up, and you can. Well, I didn't queue. I went straight in, and you look to your left, and there's like a screen, and they've got the game on the TV. And he did something really like innocuous but really accomplished. And in my head, I was thinking, he's some player, this guy. Like throughout the first half, I was like, he knows the game inside out. And the guy behind me, it was almost like telepathy. And I promise you this happened. He went, he's some player, that Iranian, isn't he? And I went, he is, isn't he? He really is a player. And we were both like, this guy, and I never saw him again, never seen him again since. But he was like, he's really good. He's from Iran, like he plays the Iranian national team. Can't say his surname, so we just call him Saeed. This guy behind me was talking to me. And he was like, oh, he's just doing this, he's doing this. I was like, he is, isn't he? This is quite exciting, this stuff.
Mm.
And it just gave you that kind of feeling of like, this is a really good player we've got here for effectively nothing. We're paying him loan wages. It's probably 50-50 with his parent club. He's come in under no fanfare whatsoever. No one knows anything about him. And he was just dominating the game. And obviously, it was kind of later on in the season. So I think it's why he's only kind of played the 70 minutes at the time. But he played another 3 games. He got 2 man of the match appearances or awards within that 4-game period. Then he got injured. and then he never played again. And
Yeah.
I look at that and I think, do you know what? With the quality that he showed in those games, with the following that he could have had, across sort of, Iran and the neighboring countries in terms of the way that they love the sport and, seeing, one of their heroes play for a club like ours, a little bit like Sulky Hyun when we were talking about him
I was
last
just going to
week.
say that. Yeah, you're right.
He was just a really good player, and he kind of goes into that bracket of what if, what if he was able to do 14 games as opposed to 4? What if he could
Right.
have weighed in
Yes.
with some goals? All this kind of stuff. And
Promotion.
he just, if you were around and you're watching the team in sort of 2018, 2019, it wasn't great. It was a bit of a mishmash of styles. We were kind of in between managers again. It was all a bit difficult. But actually, there was some bright spots, and he for sure was one of them. I thought he was
Nice.
absolutely exceptional in the games that I saw him. So, yeah, he's in.
Yeah, he was he really was a a FIFA wonder kid, and he was highly tipped when he was coming out. And he's kind of become a bit of an international player. He's played a bit in Denmark, it looks like, but I mean, he's got almost 70 caps for the Iranian national team. He's still playing for
Yeah.
them now. He went to the World Cup most recently, so
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I mean, it's odd. So that happens to some players. They never really tie it down club wise, but they build out quite the career internationally. My favorite thing from his Wikipedia page, I'll read out for you real quick. When he got injured for Reading, he got the season-ending injury, and he couldn't go to the Asian Games with Iran, so he made a rap supporting them at the Asian Games. So
Yeah.
I'll see if I can dig that out to go along
Love
with the
that.
episode.
Love
Yeah,
that.
we'll find that. All right, so that's your midfielders. Maybe we'll go back to Bobby Convey, maybe. But you've got 4-4-1-1. So who have you got for your attackers today?
Okay, so I did say at the start that it was a little bit tricky trying to get players into this, but alongside Bobby Convey, who I'm desperate to talk about, Ross, I have to say. So hopefully we can come back to him in a minute. He's one of my all-time favourite players, alongside my guy that I've got in attacking midfield, and he's not an attacking midfielder, but he's in my team, and that's Michael
Nice.
Gilks, who is just was a supreme athlete. And then up front, I had a plethora of forwards that I could have chosen. A lot of big names, but for me, it's Jason Roberts. Absolutely love Jason Roberts, and really, he has to be in my team.
Nice. All right, and you've got, all right, let's double back on Bobby Convey then, because you do there and then have, somebody delivering crosses to the magnificent head of Jason Roberts. So why don't you follow that cross? Why don't you tell us about Convey and then cross that over to Roberts and go from there?
So Bobby Convey, when he joined, it was very difficult. He struggled to adapt to expectations, climate, formation. I don't know. Found it difficult. And the time that he joined us, he was rumoured to be going to Spurs, and it was kind of a toss up between us or Spurs. We're led to believe anyway. And he ended up with us. And in that, focus on the positives. That championship winning season, we had Glenn Little on the right, Bobby Convey on the left, and the sub was always Bobby Convey off, Stephen Hunt on. Pretty much, if you look down the list of kind of stats and substitutions for the games in that season, it was always that. Bobby Convey did not look like a professional football player. He looked like something very different to a professional football player, but he had pace, he had skill, he had positional awareness. That was largely down to Coppell's coaching, I believe. But he scored, and I was talking to, I was having a chat with someone online, a guy called Laurie. We were talking about Bobby Convey yesterday, actually. And for me, he's honestly one of the most underrated players in that championship winning team, possibly one of the most underrated players we've ever had, because the goals that he scored, the contributions that he made, the attacking prowess that he had generally was phenomenal, was absolutely phenomenal. And he came back for the the 150th game a couple of years ago. You know, when we had all the legends back in the summer, and it was just a great day. He still looks like he could do a job. He honestly really, really does. He had to give up because he developed quite severe asthma, so he just kind of stopped playing altogether. But I mean, the one thing that sticks out for him, just to round him off, was the goal that he scored at home against Millwall, which was in August, boiling hot day. And he basically ran from the halfway line, took out one, maybe two defenders with one ball, and then kind of slide it past the keeper. And the finish was just exquisite. If you Google it, it will come up. You know, Bobby Convey, Millwall, fantastic. He scored another belter against Wolves on Boxing Day, I believe, away. Again, just a really, really good player. Very, very kind of overshadowed in that team with kind of the other players that we had at the time. But he was just exceptional.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
The club put
exceptional.
out a lovely, quick thing on him. The club put out a lovely message. I think Bobby Conley got quite sick a few years ago. And the club put out a lovely message kind of giving him support and things like that, which was, yeah, it's just really nice to see like even some of the undersung members of that 106 team being appreciated by the club. All right, and you've picked Michael Gilks, which so I'm excited about this because Gilks is somebody that I've known is at the club for a long time, but I really don't know much at all about him other than he's with the academy and goes by Gilksy, it seems. So why don't you illuminate me with more than that?
He nearly ran me over once.
Oh, wow. Okay.
When you come up, I always forget the road name. I used to walk up it all the time, but Northern Way, the main road up to the stadium, the hill. And when you get there, there's like a pedestrian crossing, and there's like a little mini roundabout right in front of the mega shop and the Amy Dolan stand. And I was walking across that pedestrian crossing, and he didn't stop. He just kept going. And
Oh, my.
he was driving the car. He was driving the car, so I couldn't be angry with him. Do you know, there's not much out there in terms of videos and information and, you know, generally just kind of stuff from his playing career. And I don't know, I don't know, maybe I haven't looked hard enough. I'm not sure. I don't know. But he for me was, you know, I talked earlier about Shaggy as being one of my first heroes and, you know, kind of his stature and goal. And Gilks was very, very similar. He was, you know, we had some good players in that kind of later Elm Park era, and we had some really good talent. And Michael Gilks was just an out and out athlete, and he was with the club for around 13 years. So I kind of saw him towards the latter stage of his Reading career. He was a left midfielder, and I know that people will be going, "Why have you put him in attacking midfield?" But you know, I have to get him in. I couldn't leave out Bobby Convey, but I had to get Michael Gilks in somewhere. He was incredible with the ball, and there used to be, I suppose, slightly lazy comparisons with, you know, players like Ryan Giggs and kind of other left wingers of that era that were kind of, you know, very, very prolific in the Premier League. But actually, like, Gilks was just a really, really special player, and you just felt like when you watched him, and even in my younger years when I was watching him, you just knew he was going to do something in the game. I think he must have got kind of 50 plus goals in his time, around about 400 appearances, I think. Eventually sold to Wolves for not a lot in '97, who were managed at the time by Mark McGee, who older fans will remember is well, you know, you don't say that lightly, those phrases. But he was at Wolves, and he wanted to take him, and I think that's always quite a good sign of a player, you know, in terms of quality. If you know, a manager leaves, as Mark McGee did, you know, you come back in for players that you used to work with. You know, I always think that's a real positive and real good measure of the quality of the player, both in terms of personality, but also what they can bring to the team. So he was a really, really special talent, you know, and there's nothing specific that I can remember that he did. And I thought, wow, but he was just consistently very, very good, very, very quick. You know, you might have seen, and other people listening to this might have seen the kind of the Simod Cup final when they had like a sprint race, or around that time they had a sprint race at Wembley, and he was one of the guys. I think he won it, maybe it wasn't the Simod Cup, but it was around that time. He had a sprint race at Wembley anyway before a final.
Okay,
and
imagine he was on Superstars.
Well, something along that, yeah. Like he would have been good with that, but he was just a very very talented all rounder, and I think the fact that he is now still with the club, obviously he coached or he was kind of interim manager, if you like, in inverted commas, with Paul Ince early 2022 when Paul Ince originally came in, and he did a really, really good interview before Paul Ince came in and said, we need to galvanise the football club, we need to do this, we need to do that, and get people moving. It was just a really good thing to hear from, a club legend, and I don't like that phrase, but he is. He's obviously heavily involved with the academy manager now, I believe, is his kind of official title, bringing through the next crop of players. And, I honestly don't think there's anyone better to do that, because he gave a lot of time to the community, a lot of time to the club when he did play. And he was just a real joy to watch. So, yeah, he's in my team, no doubt.
Awesome. He's in your team as long as he's in football boots and not behind the wheel around the Medeski is
Exactly.
what's going on.
Yeah.
Do you know, it's interesting. There's a few players that went from Reading to Wolves in that period. And often that happens because of relationships, between front office people in either club. So I wonder if that was because, I wonder if that's where that started, that kind of matchup between the two clubs.
Yeah. It's funny the other day because I saw someone on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, and they were talking about how they were liking Wolves and stuff like that. No. If you were kind of a Reading fan in the mid to late 90s, Wolves were like, you don't talk about Wolves Football Club. And we played them. Another good player, actually. I'm just going off on a tangent, but just indulge me.
No, that's fine.
We played them in the semi-finals or the playoffs. 2001, I think it was, Alan Pardew's team, and we played them, and it was just a horrible atmosphere up at Molineux in the first leg. Nicky Forster scored a fantastic goal, absolutely brilliant. What great player.
Great player.
And he was nearly very very in my team as well. To be honest,
he's in
very,
a later
very,
team. Don't
if
worry,
I could pick another 11, he's 100% in there. But yeah, Wolves were it was kind of they'd look at it now and go Reading who, but they were nicking everyone. They were nicking managers, they were nicking players. They were just a horrible football club at the time. So yeah, I can't honestly say I care about Wolves now, but at the time it was very much like, no way, don't talk about them. So.
All right. Fair enough. Well, they have to live near Birmingham and we don't, so we win.
Exactly.
All right.
Exactly. And then, of course, we got Jason Roberts, who, joined in late January 2012 from Blackburn, fell out with Steve Keane, who was the manager at the time. Just
as many did.
Athlete. Honestly, he was a marquee signing at the time, and he was exactly what we needed to kick us on there, and he did. He had 17 games, 6 goals, 5 assists in that, that block of time. And the goal, everyone always refers to Southampton away when we beat them, and Lafondra, came on and scored 2 goals. But the goal that Jason Roberts scored in the first half, I'm absolutely convinced that if there was no net in that goal and he'd headed that ball the way that he did, someone would have died. If that caught someone in the face, they'd be out. Like, there's no
you've expressed controversial thoughts about that goal before. You've referred to it as a thunder bastard or a shit pinger, even though it's a header.
Can you have that as a header though? I don't know.
I don't think so. No, that's the thing. Like I'm not so keen on that. So anyway, that makes me laugh.
I mean, the cross was great, right? Kebe, he looked at him, but the finish, he just lifted everyone at a time that needed lifting, and we just needed, little ingredients just to push us on a little bit more. And obviously, we talked about Brian McDermott, and for me, and you probably won't ask me, but Brian McDermott manages this team.
Tell me your manager. There you go.
Wow, he's fantastic. I mean, I'll come back to him in a minute, but Jason Roberts, to finish off, great man, great player, incredible amount of work for charity and for people that needed it the most. Very, very humble individual. Just a good player, a really, really good player. And for me, he was instrumental in getting us promoted in that season. And it didn't work out in the Premier League. It didn't work out for that team at all in the Premier League for a number of reasons. And he had a very torrid time back in the Premier League with us. Ironically, went back to Southampton the next season, and he was dreadful in that game. He was almost non-existent, but to get us there in the first place, just absolute gratitude, and he was just just a real powerhouse. Manager Brian McDermott, very easy to go. Oh, we're going to go Steve Coppell, and Steve Coppell was fantastic, but it took him a long time to settle that team and to build that, and to when Steve Coppell joined, we were absolute trash. We were really, really awful as a football team, and it took a long time, and it took a lot of patience from John Medeski and the rest of the club to get Steve Coppell and the team to the point where they were able to do what they did. Brian McDermott, was around the club for a very, very long time, and when he came in, first time to pick up the pieces from disaster that was Brendan Rodgers, we were on the floor, but it took him a lot less time to galvanise that team and make us into a championship winning side. We got to Swansea in the playoff final, very, very narrow in terms of losing that. But, Brian really just kicked us on, and he was just a great man, and I was very, very lucky to meet him on a number of occasions. And he was just like a fan, really, in a lot of respects. And to come back a second time and do what he tried to do, and he wasn't. It was a weird time because the Ties were in charge and they wanted to go in a different direction. I think in the end they kind of only moved him on, and Jaap Stam came in and things kicked on from there. But he coped with a lot of difficult challenges of that football club really, really well. And unpopular opinion, but I really feel that the championship winning team of 2011, 2012 for me was probably a bigger achievement than the 106 team, because we'd been pretty bad for a number of years and we were still coming back, and he just got us on a roll in a really short space of time. And we were just that month, kind of from March to April in that season, I've just seen nothing like it. You're just going into games and it was just so exciting to watch every single game. So yeah, for me, Brian McDermott manages this team.
Yeah, it's a great
I'm
choice.
getting emotional talking about this, actually. Really emotional talking about these players and these picks, because it's like, when you sat down and did yours, Ross, it's like it's your life, right? 30 years or whatever is a long time. You've been watching them for a long time as well, and it's when you look at the players you have seen and you've been lucky enough to to see with your own eyes, it's great. It's really great.
No, you're right.
It's
yeah,
been great to do this series. I'm saying
well,
great
and
a lot. I'm just waffling now.
No, but that's the whole point, of this series, and is to kind of like work out the reasons behind people's connections. Why do they love different players? Is it because they had similar hairstyle? Is it because they had a fun conversation just once with a with a stranger? That's the thing about football. It brings people together. And these little moments, like you talked about with, Saeed Etzelahi, whereby you had a random conversation with a person you never spoke to again. You probably had nothing else to speak to him about apart from, for some odd reason, for that moment, Saeed Etzelahi. And so that will stick in your brain forever. And so I just think it's really interesting, to hear about what helps people form connections, because football is, it's about 90 minutes with a ball moving on a pitch, but it's also about community and connection, and love. So I it's really great to hear about your team for sure, Ben. All right. Any last statements on behalf of any of those members, or are we all set?
Yeah, so 4-4-1-1 formation, as we talked about. In goal, Shaka Hislop. Then we've got Jordan Abita, Steve Brown, Nelson Abbey, Chris Gunter along the back four. And then we've got Bobby Convey, Saeed Etzelahi, as you've said throughout the pod. So I'm
Etzelahi.
Going for
Nice.
that one. Parky, don't need his full name, it's just Parky. Junior Hoylett. And then in attacking midfield, we've got Michael Gilks in an unfamiliar role, but I'm sure he'll be fine with it. And then Jason Roberts up front, all managed by Brian McDermott.
What about Parky Talahi? Is that his full name, or it is Parkinson?
Do you know, I just think they would be so good together. I just think they'd be brilliant, but,
No, that makes sense to me.
I'm not.
Do you know, one of the first sort of like 11s I saw in this sort of way, like favorite players, was like I think it was on Tifo for a Premier League thing, and they put Gerrard in at right back, because obviously he's a centre mid, in everyone's memory, but he did start his career at Liverpool at right back. So like, hey, screw it, we can go with that. That's fine. So there you go. Jokes at attacking. Then I think that's fine. Cool. All right.
Maybe one day when we get a bit of time, we could do like our non-11. No, actually, no one would care, would they? Because it's a podcast about Reading Football Club. So why would anyone care if we did a non-Reading 11? Stupid.
Yeah, I do think that the
idea.
worst idea is funny. That someone said the other day, like think of like the most notorious 11 for Reading. Basically, I think that's a really funny idea.
True.
Trent captain, obviously. I'm now writing that out. All right. All right, guys. Well, thank you as always again to ZCZ Films for sponsoring the show. Ben, thank you for bringing your team in today. Enjoyed it.
Thanks for having me. Honestly, it's thanks for having me. But you know what I mean.
Thanks for having you. Yeah, you can. Really, really let's slide back into our seats.
It's been great to talk about them. Absolutely fantastic. So yeah, thoroughly enjoyable.
Fantastic. All right. And we will see you next time, listeners. That's obviously, well, there's two of us, so we'll have a guest next time, and we won't reveal who that is just yet. But yeah, this series will continue. Looking forward to episode 3. And yeah, come on, you Royals.